The sound L is a mix of Y and Y. Dmitry Ljotić was born in Belgrade in 1891. Ljotić's father was politician Vladimir. Surprisingly, Vladimir Ljotić was the person to translate the Communist Manifesto into Serbian. Vladimir was also a close friend of King Petar Karađorđević. Dmitry Ljotić was extremely religious and nicknamed Mita Bogomoljac, devotionalist Mita. Mita is a common nickname for Dmitrije. At one point, he wanted to join the church. My comment: Serbia would have been a much better place if Ljotić listened to his religious call. Unfortunately for us, Ljotić's father convinced him to study law. He graduated from the law school of the University of Belgrade. Ljotić was also vegetarian and refused to drink alcohol. No wonder Serbs disliked him. In 1912, Ljotić joined Serbian army to serve in First Balkan War. In 1913, he served in Second Balkan War. In autumn 1913, Ljotić got state scholarship to study agriculture in Paris, France. He spent 1 year in Paris, even though he failed to pass the exam to attend the university. He was exposed to the right-wing proto-fascist ideas of French writer Charles Maurras. This means that his fascism wasn't homegrown. He rejoined the army when World War I started. Ljotić remained in the army until 1920. In 1920s, Ljotić joined People's Radical Party, whose leader was Nikola Pašić. Pašić is the most famous for being Serbian Prime Minister during World War I. I have to point out that radicals were not fascists. They started as socialists in the Agrarian Party. After 1910s, they are a conservative party. They were very critical of the Obrenović dynasty. After the Karađorđević dynasty took the throne in 1903, radicals became the most dominant party in Serbia. They remained important in newly established Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes. In 1927, Ljotić ran for public office in parliamentary elections, but he lost. Soon afterwards, he left People's Radical Party. There was political crisis in the kingdom, mainly between Serbian and Croatian politicians. Serb politicians shot and killed several Croatian politicians in the parliament in 1928. King Alexander had it enough and established his own dictatorship. This happened on 6th January 1929, and thus it is known as the 6th January dictatorship. Political parties were banned. The Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes changed its name to Yugoslavia. Ljotić supported King Alexander and was rewarded with the position of Minister of Justice. Ljotić held this position between February and August 1931. Ljotić suggested to King Alexander that the Yugoslav political system should be structured on the Italian fascist model. Ljotić also wrote a draft constitution. King Alexander rejected Ljotić's constitution as too authoritarian. This means that literal dictator believed Ljotić's ideas were too authoritarian. Ljotić resigned. In 1931, King Alexander ended his dictatorship without solving any problems. He was assassinated in 1934 during his official visit to Marseille, France. His killers were anti-Yugoslav Macedonians, Croats and Bulgarians. And then who says that South Slavs cannot work together? Sarcasm. In 1934, Ljotić decided to form his own political party. He united 3 small fascist movements from different parts of Yugoslavia. They were Yugoslav Action from Zagreb, Croatia, the Fighters from Ljubljana, Slovenia, and the Awakening from Zrenjanin, Serbia. Their official new name was Yugoslav National Movement. But they became famous as BOR, acronym of Združena borbena organizacija rada. English United Active Labor Organization, official translation. Side note, the word borbena means fighting, so I would translate it as United Fighting Labor Organization. Very conveniently, the word zbor means rally in Serbian. Ljotić made sure people would remember the party's name. Zbor participated in 1935 and 1938 elections. Both times Zbor won about 1% of votes. This shows that Yugoslav public wasn't thrilled with fascist ideas. Ljotić before World War II was a fringe politician. Far-right Serbs today defend Ljotić. Their arguments are that Zbor had two non-Serb vice presidents. They were Croat Juraj Korenić and Slovene Fran Kandare. Ljotić's wife Ivka was Catholic Croat. This fact is used as evidence that he wasn't nationalistic. True Serb nationalists wouldn't have had 3 kids with a Croat. German Nazi regime noticed Ljotić and started financing Zbor. They describe Zbor as a kind of National Socialist Party. Its principles are the struggle against Freemasons, against Jews, against communists, and against Western capitalism. Ljotić was an unpopular figure in Serbia due to his pro-German sympathies and religious fanatism. But he established close ties to Bishop Nikolaj Velimirović. Bishop Nikolaj was one of the most esteemed Serbian theologians. I have the impression that Serbian far-right defends Ljotić because they like Bishop Nikolaj. Bishop Nikolaj was canonized as saint by Serbian Orthodox Church. Today there is debate whether Saint Nikolaj was anti-Semitic. Zbor wasn't doing well before World War II. Some members left the movement. In 1937, Ljotić publicly accused Prime Minister Milan Stojinović of being involved in the assassination of King Alexander in 1934. In retaliation, Prime Minister Stojinović publicly revealed that Ljotić was financed by the Germans. The Stojinović government went on to prohibit all Zbor rallies and newspapers, confiscated Zbor propaganda material, and arrested Zbor leaders. In September 1938, Ljotić was arrested after the Yugoslav gendarmerie opened fire on a crowd of Zbor supporters, killing at least 1 person. Ljotić was sent to an insane asylum for his religious mania. He was released soon. In 1938, Ljotić wrote a brochure in which he claimed that Judaism is the greatest evil of the present. In newspaper articles, Ljotić advocated a pro-Axis Yugoslav foreign policy and criticized Belgrade's tolerance of Jews. In August 1939, Ljotić's cousin Milan Nedić became Minister of Defense. Ljotić used this familial connection to spread his pro-German propaganda among Royal Yugoslav Army. I will compare Nedić to French Marshal Pétain. Both Pétain and Nedić collaborated with German occupators. In early years of World War II, 1939 and 1940, Zbor managed to get more members. There were street clashes between members of Zbor and communists. Zbor's student wing was formed under the name Beli Orlovi, English White Eagles. On 23 October 1940, Zbor and Beli Orlovi attacked the building of Belgrade University. The White Eagles threatened faculty and students with pistols and knives, stabbed some of them, hailed Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini as their heroes, and shouted "Down with the Jews." Yugoslav government decided to ban Zbor. Many Zbor members were arrested and Ljotić went into hiding. In November 1940, Nedić resigned from the government because of how they treated Zbor. Ljotić remained in hiding until April 1941. In April 1941, Yugoslavia was occupied by the Axis and partitioned. From now on, we are talking about German-occupied Serbia. The Germans sent Ljotić a written notice assuring his freedom of movement in German-occupied Serbia. The King Peter II and the government left the country. Now, Germans had to find someone to lead occupied Serbia. They wanted Ljotić for the job, but he was too unpopular, so they chose Nedić instead. The only official function Ljotić held in German-occupied Serbia was administrator of Smederevo. He had to rebuild the town since most of Smederevo was destroyed in a huge ammunition depot explosion in June 1941. This explosion was never fully explained. Nedić's son, daughter-in-law, and grandson were among the 2,500 dead. Nedić's apologists used this tragedy to justify why Nedić accepted to work with the Germans. Germans allowed Ljotić to give speeches over Radio Belgrade. In August 1941, hundreds of prominent and influential Serbs signed the appeal to the Serbian nation, which was published in major Belgrade newspapers. The appeal called upon the Serbian population to help the authorities in every way in their struggle against the communist rebels and called for loyalty to the Nazis and condemned the partisan resistance as unpatriotic. Ljotić was one of the 546 people who signed the document. There is no doubt that Ljotić collaborated with the Germans. In September 1941, Ljotić formed Srpski dobrovoljački odredi, SDO, English Serbian Volunteer Detachments. He managed to recruit 3,500 people. His group was much smaller than Draža's Chetniks or Tito's partisans. Ljotić's SDO was involved in Kragujevac massacre in October 1941. In 1942, SDO changed its name to Srpski dobrovoljački korpus, SDK, English Serbian Volunteer Corps. SDK receives arms, ammunition, food and clothing from the Germans. They were placed under the command of German General Paul Bader. SDK was not formally part of the Wehrmacht. In reality, they were treated as such. The SDK helped the Gestapo track down and round up Jewish civilians who had managed to evade capture by the Germans. This means that SDK participated in the Holocaust. Members took an oath in which they pledged to fight to the death against both communists and the Chetniks and to serve the cause of the Serbian people. Ljotić had no direct control over SDK. His apologists claim that Ljotić was against the Holocaust. Considering what he said and wrote about the Jews before World War II, I highly doubt this statement. Chetnik leader Draža Mihailović disliked Ljotić. In July 1942, Draža asked the London-based Yugoslav government in exile to publicly denounce Ljotić and Nedić as traitors. The Yugoslav government in exile responded by doing so publicly over BBC radio. The SDK was sent to Montenegro to fight against partisans in February 1944. SDK suffered huge losses. Pro-German groups had to retreat in front of Yugoslav partisans and Red Army. Plain and simple, it was total chaos. Croatian Ustaše and SDK were on the same side, and yet Ustaše killed some SDK officers. In December 1944, Ljotić convinced the Germans to release Serbian Patriarch Gavrilo and Bishop Nikolai from the Hau concentration camp. They spent only 3 months in the Hau, but were under house arrest in a monastery since 1941. Ljotić supported the Kingdom of Yugoslavia to be re-established under King Petar II. Between March and April 1945, Ljotić and Draža exchanged messages concerning alliance against the partisans. But it was already too late. Ljotić was killed on 23 April 1945 in the car accident. His funeral was conducted by Patriarch Gavrilo and Bishop Nikolai. Bishop Nikolai described Ljotić as the most loyal son of Serbdom. Most SDK members were either killed or went into exile. Nedić officially took his own life by jumping from the window in 1946. Most Serbs believed he was pushed by communists. Bishop Nikolai never returned to Yugoslavia. He died in USA in 1956. In 1974, Ljotić's brother Jakov was killed by Yugoslav Secret Service in Munich, Germany. He led remains of Zbor after the war. In early 2000s, new regime in Serbia tried to rehabilitate Ljotić. Serbian public was against this. What do I think? I have no doubt that Ljotić loved Serbs and Orthodoxy. But this fact does not justify collaboration with the enemy or participation in the Holocaust. He shouldn't be rehabilitated.